Hello. Thanks for watching this recording of the application masterclass for the Master's in Science and Management. My name is Abby Snouffer, and I am the Associate Director of Lundquist Admissions. I will be leading you through this call, talking through everything to do with the application and how to create your most competitive application possible. On the slide here, you'll also see my counterpart, Hadley Underwood. If you watched the Discover the MSM recording, you would have met her there. But she also works alongside with me in supporting our MSM prospective students. So, taking a quick look at our agenda, we'll do a brief overview of the Master's in Management program and also the class profile. But the majority of this recording is going to be focused around how to apply to the program and how to create a competitive application. We'll also briefly touch on scholarships and funding and application deadlines to wrap everything up. So let's look at the MSM snapshot. A couple things that are important to know about the Master's Management program. Firstly, this is designed to give you a really strong foundation in business. Whether you have some business kind of in your undergrad degree, or you're coming from a completely different style of undergrad degree, where you never took a accounting class or a finance class or data visualization, this program is designed to give you all of that really foundational information that will help you in your career, no matter what industry you end up going into. There is no work experience required. So this is designed to go straight from your bachelor's degree into this master's degree. Of course, we do have some students that have worked, but there is no expectation for work experience to be competitive for this program. It is a cohort-based program that starts every fall. We keep our cohorts small intentionally to really foster collaboration and relationship building. And it also just kind of fosters a better learning experience, we think, when you can kind of lean on your peers and have a strong working relationship with your professors and faculty. This is a full-time in-person program, so you're going to be kind of diving into the deep end and being really fully immersed in the program for the 1 year. It is fast-paced, so we are also on the term system. So we have this program will last 3 academic terms, a fall, winter, and a spring, and they are only 10 weeks long. And you are going to be taking about 5 classes per term, so it is going to be very fast-paced, but it is going to be accelerated. So you're going to get in and get out and have a really strong foundation in business at the end as you graduate. There are no classes on Fridays. So, not to say you're not going to be busy on Friday, because a lot of times that is going to be time spent catching up on work for your classes, working on group projects. There might be some experiential learning opportunities that happen on Fridays. So, you'll definitely be busy on Fridays. And this program is eligible to do the accelerated MBA after. So if you're interested in getting your MBA, but you're not quite at the point in your kind of career or professional career to get your MBA, because that is designed for kind of mid-level professionals. You can get your MSM here at the University of Oregon, go out, start your career, and then when it's the best time for you to come back to get your MBA, you can qualify to do that accelerated for the 15-month program rather than the 2-year program. So let's take a quick look at the class profile. So for our class of 2027, cohort size is about 25 students. So I said small cohort, I meant it. But with that small cohort size, you're going to be able to get to know everybody in your cohort really well, build those strong relationships and kind of that network that you're going to be able to take with you kind of years and years after graduation. That also leads to smaller class sizes where you're going to have more of a kind of professional working relationship with your professors. So a little bit different than experience in many undergrad programs. Our cohort has many different majors that they're coming from. We have individuals that are coming from STEM majors, the social sciences, the liberal arts degrees. So a pretty wide background of kind of education backgrounds and different kind of schools and programs that people are coming from. So you get to learn from your peers that maybe have strengths in other areas than you do. So again, that collaboration kind of piece to it. Our average years of work experience is about 3 years for this cohort, and you can see the average undergrad GPA and age as well on this slide. So you might be looking at this, be like, I don't really match these things that I'm seeing as far as like the class of 2027. That is okay. These are averages. You don't need to meet every single one of these points. You will be able to kind of showcase yourself through your application, and there's going to be things that you're going to want to highlight more than other things. And so that's where creating your application and making it as competitive as possible comes down to really who you are and what you want to focus on. And that's where we come in to support you. We're going to give you the tips on this call, but if you want to schedule a meeting with either myself or with Hadley, we're going to be able to work with you, take a look at kind of where you're at, your materials, and give you some tips that are going to be specific for you. But let's take a look at the application process. So you'll want to make sure, if you haven't already started an application, to go to that URL and create your application or create your account really with the University of Oregon Division of Graduate Studies. And then you'll want to make sure that you select the right program to apply to. And so you'll select degree level of master's in the program as management, comma, SM. And that'll make sure that you're applying for the master's in management program. You'll complete all the application sections. The last step to submit your application to make sure it's fully complete is paying your application fee. And then the very last step in the application process is the interview if you are invited. So, how do you create a competitive application? We'll walk through every single one of these application materials, even the optional ones, and give you some tips and tricks along the way. So, let's talk about the resume first. So we will want to see your most up-to-date resume attached to your application. You'll want to make sure that you're using the who method, particularly for your bullet points under your relevant experience. So the bullet points shouldn't be listing out your kind of tasks and responsibilities in your positions. You want to make sure that they're really qualitative and quantitative bullet points. So who stands for what, how, and outcome. So what did you accomplish in this position? How did you do it? And what was that outcome? So ideally, kind of quantifying. If you're able to grow a social media following, how much did you grow it by? Kind of things like that. So make sure that those bullet points provide a lot of really good insight into what you're able to accomplish in those different roles and responsibilities. Include all your relevant experience. So internship experience, definitely highlight that. If you're working on campus, if you had, a part-time job while you're completing your undergrad degree, and yet that has a lot of skills and experiences that are going to be transferable to the work placement and also to this program, make sure you include that on your resume. For your experiences, make sure you list month and year, date, format. That's going to make it really clear to our application or our admissions team, rather, how long you held those different roles and responsibilities. And that's going to be really critical for different factors that the admission committee is looking for. If you are currently in your undergrad degree, you haven't graduated yet, make sure you do list your expected graduation date on your resume. That's going to make it really clear to the admission team when you're going to be graduating and if you are eligible to start in the master's management program, because you have to complete that bachelor's degree before you start the master's management program. We highly encourage you to upload your resume as a PDF. That makes sure that all of your formatting is locked in and nothing can be kind of corrupted or kind of messed up in that upload process. A lot of times it does happen with Word. And you don't want, all that work that you put into your bullet points or that month and year for those experiences to be cut off because we'll kind of have to ask for that information. So PDF, way to go. And then More Career Services through the Lundquist College of Business has some really handy resources around your resume and kind of making those updates. So if you need to make updates to your resume, you need to kind of freshen that up a little bit before you submit your application, check out this resume guide. That QR code will bring you right to that web page, but you can also kind of find this by a quick Google search for More Career Services resume guide. But you can see here that they have lots of great kind of tips, formatting tips, what to make sure you include to make sure that your resume is as best it can be for your application. So next, let's take a look at transcripts. So unofficial versus official transcripts. What do you need on your application? We need to see your unofficial transcripts. And what does that mean? Unofficial transcripts essentially is what you have access to and then what you have access to share by yourself. So typically your transcripts, you can find those on like an online portal within your undergrad institution. It'll probably say unofficial transcript or have some watermarks that showcase that. But that is all we really need for the application. Official transcripts we'll need later down the line. That's going to be the main differentiator between unofficial and official. Is that official comes from Office of Registrar to Office of Registrar. So from your undergrad institution to the University of Oregon. Typically, those are sealed, and that's what makes them official. But for your application, we just need those unofficial transcripts. So what needs to be on your unofficial transcripts? We need to see your degree and your major information, your degree conferred date. So if you completed that degree, we'll need to see that listed on your transcripts and that cumulative GPA. So a special note for international candidates, a lot of times on your diplomas or mark sheets or transcripts, whatever it's kind of titled as, some of this information will be missing. So the conferred date or degree and major information. So in those cases, we'll need to see additional documentation that'll showcase that information. So typically that's a degree certificate or additional documents that will showcase all the required information needed from the admissions team. And then if your transcripts were issued in a language other than English, we will need to see translated transcripts. We'll need to see original and the translated uploaded to your application. They will need to be kind of notarized translations of those transcripts. So if you have any particular questions about that, let us know and we can kind of help you out with that process. And then another special note for University of Oregon graduates, you will not have to request official transcripts to be sent to the University of Oregon because we already have them. So one less thing you'll have to worry about as you're preparing to start a program. So moving on to our first of the optional application materials, the GMAT and GRE test scores. So GMAT and GRE test scores are not required. No one is going to be required to submit test scores to their application. However, if you're already going to be planning to take the GMAT or the GRE, if you're applying to other programs where it's required and you have a strong test score, you might as well apply with those because that can make your application even stronger. However, there are circumstances where we might recommend, if you weren't already planning to take the GMAT or GRE, it could help you to provide your most competitive application possible. And that's going to be particularly around GPA. So if your cumulative undergrad GPA is less than a 3.0 on a 4.0 scale, we would strongly encourage you to apply with test scores. But again, it is optional. Next, let's talk about the statement of purpose. So this is essentially your personal essay or your essay that you'll be uploading with your application. So in your statement of purpose, you'll need to touch on the first three bullet points that you can see on the slide here. And then that last bullet point is optional. But essentially, this I think is one of the more important pieces of your application because all of your other application materials are dates and facts and numbers. This is showcasing who you are. It's the first time before you're even invited to an interview to show who you are, what are your motivations, why do you want to be in this program, what are your career goals, and how does that align with this program, and what are you bringing to the cohort. So your skills and experience and your perspective are important to the admission committee because of our cohort style master's programs, we want to know what are going to be those skills that you're bringing to the program and to the University of Oregon community. So not only what you're hoping to gain from this program, but what are you bringing to the program? So spending time and making sure that the statement of purpose is genuine, authentic, and unique to you is going to make you stand out from the crowd. So word count, we have listed here about 1,200 words or less. That is about like 2 pages, depending on how you format your statement of purpose. And then that optional bullet point is going to give you an opportunity to speak to if you have a lower GPA or you don't have strong test scores, provide additional evidence and experience and proficiencies that are, outside of a GPA or GMAT or GRE test scores. Kind of what have you been able to experience, outside of kind of traditional kind of higher education that you could bring to this program. This also gives you an opportunity to kind of speak to, maybe why your GPA is lower, kind of, being transparent and kind of showing how something affected that or how you're going to be different or how your study habits have changed, whatever it may be for you, as long as you're identifying that and kind of showcasing, other things that you're bringing to the program, that's going to be beneficial. So don't skip out on that last bullet point, if it makes sense to kind of share more information about that. English proficiency. If English is not your native language, we'll need to see some evidence of English proficiency. So you'll see the different tests and scores that are accepted by the Lundquist College of Business, and you'll see the minimum required score for each of those kind of testing. Or if you're able to earn your degree from an English-speaking country, and you'll see those English-speaking countries listed on the slide, then you will not need to take an English proficiency test and get those scores. So we will need to see this if English is not your native language. All right, and letter of recommendation. This is our last optional application material. So again, optional, you do need not have to apply with a letter of recommendation. But if you want another way to strengthen your application, maybe your GPA is lower or you're not coming from a quantitative background in your bachelor's degree, because this program is very quantitatively heavy, there's going to be lots of math and numbers. If you want something else to kind of boost your application, a letter of recommendation might be a good idea. So if you opt in to do this, one thing to note, the letter recommendation is the one thing that you do not have control over. So it is uploaded on your behalf by your recommender. So you want to make sure that you are communicating with them, making sure they know kind of your timeline, and that could slow things down in the process. So especially if you're coming up on a deadline, you might want to factor the pros and cons with a letter of recommendation. But if you do opt in, here's some things to know. You can choose a professor or professional recommender. So professional would be somebody that you worked with or worked for, and kind of like an on-campus job or internship, things like that. They should know you for a minute, so we say a year or more, but someone that has worked with you for a good amount of time that can really speak to specific examples around intellectual capacity, motivation, work experience, maturity, all of those things that would be kind of recommending you to be in a professional master's program like this. So, weigh the pros and cons, but this is another way that you can strengthen your application. And then one of the last steps of the application to fully submit it is application fee. So there is a section in the application for a fee waiver or discount. There are lots of different types of fee waivers and discounts. So you'll want to make sure that you look at those closely, make sure that you are eligible for a fee waiver or discount. And then most of them do have additional steps that need to be taken, whether providing additional information, short essays. So you want to make sure that you're following those steps accordingly to make sure that you can get that waiver or discount. So an important note, the Lundquist admission does not offer any application fee waivers through this process. However, the Division of Graduate Studies does. So a lot of that information you'll see through their website. That's linked on the application now. And then important note, if you are a U.S. Armed Service member, indicate that status on your application and follow instructions to make sure that you can be application fee exempt. So once you have submitted your application, all those application materials, you're going to be moved to your application portal. And the screenshot you'll see on the slide here is going to be what that looks like. You'll notice that last step is paying your application fee, and you'll see that amount there. So if you applied for an app fee waiver or a discount, pause. Make sure that you wait to get notification about your waiver or your discount, because there's going to be probably like a real life person that's reviewing that information, and making sure that you're eligible for a waiver or discount. So it can take a couple days. So don't pay it right away because it will not be reimbursed if you apply for a waiver or discount. Once that is approved, when you log back into your application, you'll either see that app fee amount go down to zero if you got a full waiver, or the discounted amount if you applied for a discount. And then you can pay it, and that'll fully submit your application. On this application portal, you can also track your recommendations, your letter of recommendation. So that header, you'll click on that. You can monitor if it's been uploaded. So kind of tracking, make sure that last piece of your application has been submitted. You can also hit reminders. You can send reminders through this application portal. So if you want to send a quick little email reminder from the application to your recommender, you can also kind of manage that process that way as well. So the very, very last step of the application process is the interview if you're invited. So some things to know about the interview. To prepare, you're going to want to really be able to speak to why the Oregon MBA, your career goals, and how that aligns with the Oregon MSM program. Um, there also is going to be situation-based questions probably in that interview. And situation-based questions are provide an example when you did this. Give me a situation when this happened. So you're going to be looking to your past experience to kind of pull a real life example that you've had that kind of aligns with what the question's being asked. So the best way to format your responses for those types of questions is using the STAR method. STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. So if you're hitting those points in your response, then make sure that you're kind of hitting everything that the interviewer is looking for, and it's just a really full, well-rounded response. And the last thing to remember is dress professionally. Whether you are interviewing over Zoom or you're coming to campus interviewing in person, this is a professional master's program. Make sure that you're making a good impression in your interview. Okay, so let's take a look at tuition and funding. So in the top of the slide, you'll see the estimated tuition costs and fees for the Master's in Management program. Resident means that you're a resident of the state of Oregon. If you're not a resident of the state of Oregon, you'll want to look at that non-resident tuition. And then let's talk about funding options. So Lundquist scholarships. One of the really important ones is the merit-based scholarship. So that is included in your application to the program that does not require any separate applications, but that is going to look at the total merits of your application materials. So creating a competitive application is important first for being admitted to the program, but secondly, to make sure that you are earning as much as you can in that merit-based scholarship. So that is looking at the merits of your resume and how that's structured, the merits of your statement of purpose, and your interview and the interview feedback. So every step of your application is going to be factored in into how much you can earn in that scholarship. So you don't want to rush you don't want to rush your application for the program for multiple reasons. Um, and that's you'll be notified of your merit-based scholarship at time of admission. The admission committee will be making those decisions and their awards for the merit-based scholarship at the same time. Once you're admitted to a program, then you have a lot of different options as far as scholarships to apply to, either through the Lundquist College of Business or UO-wide awards through either Division of Graduate Study, kind of UO in general, things like that. So the sooner that you submit your application and go through the process, the more time you have to apply to additional kind of scholarship opportunities. And then, of course, there's graduate employment and work study opportunities, and those can also be helpful in funding your program. All right, last thing I will share with you before we wrap up this call is going to be application deadlines. So you can see on the slide here, here are all the deadlines that we have set for the fall 2027 application cycle. A couple ones that are important that'll point out. Priority scholarship. If you really want to make sure that you are giving yourself enough time to really maximize your scholarship opportunities, apply no later than January 15th. Really applying earlier is better. A lot of the additional scholarships through the University of Oregon have deadlines in February and March. So the sooner you apply, the more time you have to apply for those additional scholarships. Those typically will have more essays you need to apply to or apply with. So you want to make sure that you're giving yourself time to apply for those other opportunities. If you're an international candidate, an important deadline for you is going to be March 15th. That is the final deadline for international candidates. And then the final deadline is July 23rd of 2027. So something important to know, we offer rolling admissions. So you do not need to wait for an application deadline in order to submit your application. And we will also review your application once it's submitted. So once you submit, there's not going to be a really long wait time, and we do like a batch review. It'll be reviewed as applications are submitted. So you'll see that decision notification date next to the application due. That is like a guarantee. You will find out no later than those dates if you apply by the deadline. But typically, you're going to find out much sooner than that. Um, so something to be aware of. When you are ready to submit your application, go ahead and submit it. All right. And that's all I have to share with you today. So thank you so much for watching this recording. If you made this far, thank you so much. If you have questions, you'll see some contact information on the slide here, or make sure that you reach out to either myself or to Hadley, and we can work with you more kind of one-on-one to answer your more individual questions about your application, what makes you competitive for this program, and you can really, really optimize that. So thank you again for watching this recording, and we hope to see your application soon. Bye.